A stranger left a cradle at the church door, then collapsed whispering, "That's my wife's child." But not my wife. The stranger comes with the morning mist, carrying his burden like a prayer wrapped in blankets. His boots drag through the dust of Esperanza's empty main street, each step heavier than the last. In his arms, something small stirs against the desert cold that clings to the hours before sunrise. Father Miguel hears the sound first. Not the footsteps, but the crying. Thin and desperate, it cuts through the silence like a blade through cloth. He rises from his knees where he has been praying in the dim light of his small church, his joints stiff from age and the hard wooden floor. The crying grows louder, more urgent, and something in his chest tightens with knowing. The church door stands open to the morning air, as it always does. Father Miguel believes in open doors, in the possibility that someone lost might find their way inside. But when he steps onto the wooden porch, what he finds is not someone seeking sanctuary. It is someone giving it away. The man stands at the bottom of the church steps, swaying like a tree in wind. His clothes hang loose on his thin frame, torn at the shoulders and stained dark with what Father Miguel knows is blood. Fresh blood, still wet enough to catch the weak light of dawn. The bundle in his arms moves again, and a small fist pushes free from the blanket, tiny fingers that open and close like flower petals. "Please," the stranger says, and his voice breaks on the word. "Take her." Father Miguel moves down the steps slowly, his hands open and empty. He has seen desperate men before, has learned to read the language of their bodies. This man is not dangerous, not to the child, not to anyone but himself. There is something finished about him, something that speaks of endings rather than beginnings. "What is her name?" Father Miguel asks, though he reaches for the baby without waiting for an answer. The child is warm against his chest, heavier than she looks, real in the way that hope becomes real when you hold it in your hands. The stranger's knees give way, and he falls forward, catching himself against the church steps. Dark spots bloom across the wooden planks where his blood drips. "She has no name," he whispers. I couldn't." Father Miguel kneels beside him, one arm cradling the child, the other reaching toward the wounded man. Up close, he can see the hole in the stranger's shirt, right below his heart. The cloth around it is soaked black, and Father Miguel knows there is no helping this kind of wound. Not with prayer, not with anything he can offer. "Tell me," the priest says gently. "Let me understand." The stranger looks up, and his eyes are the color of winter sky, pale blue and empty of warmth. "My wife," he says, and the words come out like stones from his mouth. The child is hers, but not mine. Never mind." The baby makes a small sound, not crying now, but something softer. Father Miguel adjusts his hold, and she settles against him with the trust that children give so easily, so completely. Around them, the town begins to wake. A rooster calls from somewhere behind the general store. Smoke rises from the chimney of the boarding house across the street. "Where's your wife now?" Father Miguel asks, though he thinks he already knows the answer. The stranger's breath comes in short gasps. Each one seems to cost him something he can barely afford to give. "Gone," he says. 3 months now. Left with him, the father. Left me with. He looks at the baby, and for a moment his face twists with something that might be pain, or might be love, or might be both. "But she came back, just for one night. To leave her with me. Said she couldn't, said she didn't want." He stops talking, his head falling forward. Father Miguel waits, holding the child close, feeling her small heartbeat against his chest. The sun is climbing now, burning off the mist, and soon the town will be fully awake. Soon there will be questions and curious eyes, and the kind of talk that follows tragedy like dust follows horses. "I found them." The stranger continues, his voice barely a whisper now. "Found her with him in the old Miller place, just outside town. She was crying, holding the baby, saying she couldn't leave her with me, saying I wouldn't understand, wouldn't forgive." He laughs, but there is no humor in the sound. She was right about that. Father Miguel feels something cold settle in his stomach. "What did you do?" "What any man would do," the stranger says, and now his eyes meet the priest directly. I took back what was mine. The child, I mean. Just the child. Let them keep each other. The words hang in the air between them like smoke. Father Miguel understands now. Understands the blood, the desperate journey through the desert night, the way the man holds himself like someone carrying a great weight. He has killed them, the priest realizes. The unfaithful wife and her lover. Left them in the old Miller place while he rode through darkness with a child that was never truly his, but was all he had left of a life that meant something once. You can't run from this, Father Miguel says quietly. I'm not running, the stranger replies. I'm finishing it. The baby stirs in the priest's arms, opening eyes that are dark as midnight, dark as her mother's must have been. She looks up at Father Miguel with the solemn gaze of someone far older than her small body suggests, as if she understands that her life has just changed in ways she cannot yet name. She needs a name, Father Miguel says. The stranger nods, struggling to his feet. Blood runs down his shirt front in thin streams, but he stands straight now, as if the burden of carrying the child was the only thing that kept him bent. Elena, he says. My wife wanted to name her Elena, after her grandmother. Before everything. Elena, Father Miguel repeats, and the name feels right in his mouth, feels like something that belongs to the child already. A beautiful name. The stranger takes a step backward, then another. His hand moves to the gun at his hip, an old Colt, worn smooth from use. Take care of her, he says. She's innocent in all this. Whatever her mother did, whatever I did, she's clean. Where are you going? Father Miguel asks, though he thinks he knows this answer too. To face what's coming, the stranger says. Sheriff will be here soon enough when they find the bodies. I won't make him hunt. He turns to go, stumbling slightly, then stops and looks back one more time. Tell her, when she's old enough to understand, tell her I try to love her. Try to be something better than what I was. Tell her that much was true. Father Miguel nods, and the stranger walks away down the dusty street. His shadow grows longer as the sun rises higher, stretching behind him like a dark promise of the day to come. The priest watches until he disappears around the corner, heading toward the sheriff's office, toward whatever justice or mercy waits for him there. Elena makes a soft sound in his arms, and Father Miguel looks down at her perfect small face. She will grow up without knowing the violence that brought her here, without understanding the weight of the choices that others made in her name. That is something, at least, that is a kind of grace. The town is waking fully now. Mrs. Henderson opens her shutters across the street and waves. Young Tommy Martinez runs past, chasing a stray dog. Normal life, continuing as it always does, even when the world changes in the space of a single conversation on church steps. Father Miguel carries Elena inside, into the cool dimness of the sanctuary where sunlight falls in colored patterns through the small stained glass window his predecessor installed 20 years ago. He will need milk and diapers and all the small necessities that keep a baby alive and growing. He will need help and wisdom and patience for the questions that will surely come. But for now, he simply sits in the front pew and holds her close, this child born of betrayal and violence, but innocent as morning light. Outside, he can hear voices beginning to stir, the first whispers of curiosity about the stranger and his burden. Soon the whole town will know that something has happened, something that will change the quiet rhythm of their days. Elena's eyes drift closed as she settles into sleep, trusting completely in the arms that hold her. Father Miguel watches her breathe, steady and sure, and wonders what kind of man he will need to become to raise a child properly in a world that seems determined to break the innocent along with the guilty. The days that follow bring their own quiet sorrows, their own small mercies. Father Miguel learns to move through his morning prayers with Elena sleeping in a wooden crate beside the altar, her tiny chest rising and falling with the rhythm of innocence. The crate was meant for hymnals, but it cradles her well enough, lined with the softest cloth the church women could spare. Mrs. Valdez brings goat's milk every morning, still warm from the animal's body. She says nothing about where the child came from, The whole town knows by now about the stranger who surrendered himself to Sheriff Morrison, about the 2 bodies found at the old Miller place. But she asks no questions, simply sets the milk on the church steps, and touches her cross before walking away. Elena drinks hungrily, her small fists curled against the bottle like she's holding on to life itself. Father Miguel marvels at this. How completely she trusts, how willingly she takes what is offered. There is no suspicion in her dark eyes, no understanding of the violence that brought her here. She exists in the present moment, needing only warmth and food and the sound of a gentle voice. The nights are hardest. Elena wakes often, crying with the sharp distress of the very young. And Father Miguel finds himself pacing the narrow aisle between the pews, bouncing her gently while he whispers prayers he hopes God will count as lullabies. His arms ache from holding her, but it is a good ache, the kind that comes from useful work, from purpose. It is on one of these long nights that Thomas Hartwell first appears. Father Miguel hears the soft knock at the church door just after midnight. Elena has been fussing for an hour, refusing to settle no matter what he tries. He opens the door to find the town's blacksmith standing in the pale moonlight, his massive frame filling the doorway, but his hands held carefully at his sides. Heard the crying, Thomas says, his voice rough from disuse. He is not a man who speaks often or easily. Thought maybe you could use some help. Father Miguel knows Thomas by reputation rather than conversation. The blacksmith keeps to himself, works hard, drinks little, and pays his bills on time. His wife and son died of fever 3 winters ago, and since then he has spoken only when spoken to, smiled only when politeness demanded it. He comes to Mass sometimes, sitting in the back pew with his hat in his hands, but he never stays for fellowship afterward. I don't know much about babies, Thomas admits, stepping inside when the priest gestures him in. But I remember some things from before. Elena's cries fill the small space, sharp and desperate. Father Miguel feels his own desperation rising to match hers, the helpless panic that comes when nothing you try seems to work. Thomas moves closer, his boots making no sound on the wooden floor despite his size. "May I?" he asks, and Father Miguel nods, too tired to be proud. Thomas takes Elena with hands that seem impossibly gentle for their size. His fingers are scarred from years of working hot metal, but they curve around her small body with the care of someone who understands fragility. He lifts her to his shoulder, supporting her head the way Father Miguel has seen women do, but never quite mastered himself. Sometimes they just need to feel safe, Thomas says quietly, and he begins to sway. Not walking, just shifting his weight from one foot to the other in a rhythm older than words. Elena's crying softens, becomes something more like conversation. Her fist finds Thomas's shirt and grips the worn fabric. Within minutes, she is asleep against his broad shoulder, her breathing deep and even. Father Miguel stares at them both, this large, broken man holding this small, orphan child, and feels something shift in his chest. "How did you know?" he asks. Thomas doesn't look at him when he answers. "My boy used to cry like that. Sarah said it meant he felt alone, even when we were right there. Said babies can sense worry, can feel when the person holding them is afraid." "I am afraid," Father Miguel admits. It feels like a confession, though he has made no formal intention to unburden himself. "Good," Thomas says. "Means you understand what you're holding." They stand together in the dim church, neither speaking. Outside, the desert wind moves through the empty streets of Esperanza, carrying the scent of sage and dust. Elena sleeps deeply, her small body completely relaxed, and Father Miguel wonders what dreams fill the mind of someone so new to the world. "I could come by," Thomas says eventually. "Evenings, when the crying gets bad. I don't sleep much anyway." Father Miguel nods, grateful beyond words. They arrange Elena back in her makeshift bed, and she settles without waking. Thomas moves toward the door, then stops and turns back. "The man who brought her," he says. "They say he killed his wife and her lover." "Yes," Father Miguel replies, "because there is no point in denying what the whole town knows." "And the child, she's not his blood?" "No, she's not." Thomas considers this for a long moment. But he brought her here instead of leaving her out there to die. He doesn't finish the sentence, but Father Miguel understands. Instead of killing her too, in his rage and grief. Even broken men can choose mercy sometimes, the priest says. Thomas nods slowly. Maybe that's what matters. Not the breaking, but what you choose to do after. He leaves then, disappearing into the night as quietly as he came. Father Miguel remains awake for another hour, sitting beside Elena's bed and thinking about choices, about the way mercy can bloom even in the hardest ground. The days that follow establish a pattern. Thomas comes each evening after finishing his work at the forge, his clothes still smelling of coal smoke and heated iron. He never stays long during the daylight hours, but something about the darkness seems to ease his reticence. He holds Elena while Father Miguel prepares bottles or tends to church business. They talk little, but their silence is comfortable, the silence of two men who understand that some wounds are too deep for words. Elena grows stronger under their care. Her crying becomes less desperate, more purposeful. She begins to focus her eyes on their faces, to grip their fingers with surprising strength. When Thomas holds her, she seems particularly content, as if a steady calm reaches some part of her that remains restless with Father Miguel's anxious love. It is during the third week that Mrs. Rodriguez mentions the woman. She stands by the old cottonwood. The shopkeeper's wife tells Father Miguel after Sunday Massachusetts, every morning, just after sunrise, watches the church, then disappears when folks start moving about. Father Miguel's blood goes cold. What does she look like? Hard to say from that distance. Slight build, dark hair, always dressed in black, like she's mourning someone. Father Miguel thinks of the stranger's words. She left with him, the father. But the stranger had found them, had killed them both. So who is this woman who watches from shadows? That night, he tells Thomas about the mysterious observer. The blacksmith's face grows grim as he listens, his large hands gentle as he adjusts Elena's blanket. Could be anyone, Thomas says, but his voice carries doubt. Could be someone just curious about the baby. Or it could be her, Father Miguel says. Elena's mother. They both look down at the sleeping child. Her face is peaceful in sleep, unmarked by the violence that brought her here. If her mother is alive, if she's watching from the desert's edge, what does she want? What does she feel, seeing her daughter in the arms of strangers? If it is her, Thomas says slowly, what will you do? Father Miguel doesn't answer immediately. The question has been haunting him since Mrs. Rodriguez spoke, growing heavier with each passing hour. If Elena's mother lives, if she wants her child back, what right does he have to keep them apart? But if she is a woman who would abandon her baby, who would let her husband believe he was killing her along with her lover, what kind of mother is she? I don't know, he admits finally. I honestly don't know. Elena stirs in Thomas's arms, making soft sounds that might be dreams or might be contentment. Her fingers open and close around nothing, as if she's reaching for something just beyond her grasp. She's getting attached to us, Thomas observes, and there is something careful in his voice. Children do that. They bond with whoever cares for them, whoever makes them feel safe. And we're getting attached to her, Father Miguel adds, though the words feel insufficient for the fierce protectiveness that has grown in his heart over these past weeks. Thomas nods. That's the dangerous part. The caring. Outside, the desert wind carries the sound of a coyote's call, lonesome and wild, speaking of distances that can't be crossed and hungers that can't be filled. Father Miguel shivers despite the warmth of the small fire they've built in the church's iron stove. Elena's eyes open suddenly, startlingly alert for someone so young. She looks up at Thomas's face with what seems like recognition, then at Father Miguel, then back again. Her expression is solemn, as if she's trying to understand something important about these two men who have become her world. What do you see, little one? Thomas whispers. What do you know that we don't? Elena makes a small sound, not crying, but something like a question. Her dark eyes reflect the firelight, and for a moment Father Miguel imagines he sees something ancient in her gaze, some wisdom that exists before words, before understanding, before the need to choose between love and righteousness. The moment passes, and she is just a baby again, small and vulnerable and completely dependent on their protection. But the feeling lingers, the sense that she knows more about her situation than they do, that she understands something about love and loss and the complicated ways that families are made and broken and remade. Thomas rises carefully, settling Elena back in her wooden bed. She doesn't protest, simply curls her fist around the edge of her blanket and closes her eyes. Both men watch her for a long moment, and Father Miguel wonders if Thomas sees what he sees. Not just an orphan child, but a bridge between the past and whatever future they might build from the pieces of their broken lives. "I should go," Thomas says, but he doesn't move immediately. "Got an early job tomorrow, Mrs. Patterson's broken plow." "Thomas," Father Miguel says as the blacksmith reaches for his coat. "Thank you for all of this. I couldn't manage alone." Thomas pauses, his hand on the door handle. "Maybe none of us are supposed to manage alone," he says. "Maybe that's the point." He leaves, and Father Miguel settles into the chair beside Elena's bed, prepared for another night of interrupted sleep and quiet vigil. But his mind keeps returning to the woman in black, to the possibility that everything they've built over these past weeks might soon change. Elena sleeps peacefully, unaware of the questions that surround her, unaware that somewhere in the darkness a figure might be watching and waiting and preparing to claim what was never truly given away. In the morning, Father Miguel knows, he will walk to the old cottonwood and look for signs of her presence. Footprints in the dust, perhaps, or some indication of how long she's been watching. But tonight, he simply sits beside this child who has somehow become the center of his world and wonders how much love a heart can hold before it has to choose what to protect and what to surrender. She comes with the morning light, stepping out of the desert like a memory made flesh. Father Miguel is hanging wet cloth diapers on the line behind the church when he sees her walking toward him across the empty lot where children sometimes play. Her dress is black as mourning, dusty from travel, and her dark hair hangs loose around shoulders that seem too thin to carry the weight of what she brings. He knows her immediately, though he has never seen her face. There is something in the way she moves, careful like someone walking on broken ground, that speaks of guilt and longing mixed together. Her eyes find his across the distance, and he sees Elena's dark gaze looking back at him from a woman's face marked by sorrow. "You are the priest," she says when she reaches him. Her voice is soft, accented with the Spanish her grandmother probably spoke. "You have been caring for my daughter." Father Miguel lets his hands fall to his sides. The wet diaper he was hanging drips slowly onto the dry earth. "Maria Santos," he says, because there is no question who she is. She nods, and something in her face crumbles just slightly before she pulls it back together. "I have been watching, from far away, but watching. She looks healthy. She stops, swallows hard. She looks loved. She is loved," Father Miguel says simply. Maria's eyes fill with tears she doesn't let fall. "I need to explain. I need you to understand why I let Carlos believe I was dead. Why I let my baby think she had no mother." Father Miguel gestures toward the church steps. They sit together in the shade of the small overhang, and Maria stares at her hands while she speaks. Her wedding ring is gone, he notices, just a pale band of skin where it used to rest. "Carlos was a good man when I married him," she begins. "Quiet, steady, the kind of man my father said would provide well." "But good and kind are not the same thing, Father. He provided, yes, but he never saw me. I was like furniture in his house. Useful, but not treasured." Father Miguel thinks of the stranger who brought Elena, the hollow eyes, the desperate way he held the child like she was all he had left. "He loved you," the priest says. Maria shakes her head. "He loved owning me." There is a difference. A lizard darts across the dirt in front of them, quick and golden in the morning sun. Maria watches it disappear under a rock before continuing. "The merchant came through town last spring. David Morales, selling cloth and ribbons and things to make life prettier. He was the first man who ever looked at me like I was something worth looking at." She twists the fabric of her skirt between her fingers. "I know what you must think of me, Father. I know what the Bible says about wives who stray. But I was so lonely, and he made me feel like I mattered. And Elena? Father Miguel asks gently. I found out I was carrying a child just before David was set to leave town. I told him, and he wanted to take me with him. Said we could start over somewhere new, somewhere no one knew our business. Maria's voice drops to almost a whisper. I said yes. God help me, I said yes. The church door opens behind them, and Thomas emerges carrying Elena. She is awake and alert, making soft sounds as she looks around at the world with curious eyes. Thomas stops when he sees Maria, his face going carefully blank. Thomas, Father Miguel says, this is Maria, Elena's mother. Thomas looks between them, understanding crossing his features like a shadow. Elena reaches toward Maria with small, grasping hands, and Maria's careful composure finally breaks. Tears run down her cheeks as she extends one finger for Elena to hold. Hello, mi corazón, she whispers. Hello, my heart. Elena wraps her tiny fist around Maria's finger and holds tight. For a long moment, the three adults sit in silence while the baby studies her mother's face with the intense focus of someone trying to remember something important. Where is the father? Thomas asks, his voice careful but not unkind. Maria wipes her eyes with her free hand. Dead. Carlos found us at the old Miller place 3 days after Elena was born. David tried to run, but... She shakes her head. Carlos shot him first. Then he thought. I fell when David fell, and Carlos took Elena and left us both for dead. But you weren't dead, Father Miguel says. David shielded me when he fell. His body caught most of Carlos's rage. I was hurt, bleeding, but alive. I crawled to the well behind the house and hid until Carlos was gone. Then I took David's horse and rode to my sister's place in Socorro. Maria looks at Elena, who is still gripping her finger with surprising strength. I thought Carlos would raise her, maybe even love her, because she was all he had left of his marriage. I never imagined he would. He couldn't look at her without seeing your betrayal, Thomas says, and there is something in his voice that suggests he understands this particular pain. Maria nods. When I heard he brought her to the church, when I heard he was dead, I came back. But I've been afraid to approach. Afraid you would turn me away. Afraid she would be better off without me. Elena makes a small sound and tries to bring Maria's finger to her mouth. Maria laughs through her tears, and the sound is like music after long silence. She looks at Father Miguel with desperate hope. Can I hold her? She asks. Just for a moment. Father Miguel nods, and Thomas gently transfers Elena to her mother's arms. Maria cradles her daughter with the natural grace of someone who has dreamed of this moment every day for weeks. Elena settles against her immediately, as if some deep part of her recognizes the heartbeat she knew before birth. She's grown so much, Maria whispers. She's so beautiful, so perfect. Thank you for taking care of her. Thank you for loving her when I couldn't be here. What do you want, Maria? Thomas asks. The question isn't cruel, but it's direct in the way that forces truth into the open. Maria rocks Elena gently, her eyes never leaving her daughter's face. I want to be her mother again. I want to take her home and raise her and try to make up for the pain I've caused. She looks up at Father Miguel. But I don't know if I have the right. I don't know if someone like me deserves a second chance. Before Father Miguel can answer, footsteps approach across the hard ground. Mrs. Rodriguez appears around the corner of the church, probably coming to bring fresh milk or inquire about Sunday service. She stops short when she sees Maria holding Elena, her face cycling through recognition, shock, and something darker. Maria Santos, Mrs. Rodriguez says, and her voice carries the weight of judgment. I thought you were dead. As did many people, Maria replies quietly. Mrs. Rodriguez looks at Father Miguel with disapproval. You're letting her hold the child? After what she did? After the shame she brought on her husband, on this town? She is the child's mother, Father Miguel says. She is adulteress and a liar, Mrs. Rodriguez snaps. She ran off with another man and left her husband to raise a child that wasn't his. She's the reason 2 men are dead. Maria's arms tighten around Elena, but she doesn't defend herself. Thomas stands slowly, his considerable height making misses. Rodriguez, take a step backward. Seems to me, he says in his quiet rumble, that the dying and the killing were done by men. All she did was try to find some happiness in a life that didn't offer much of it. Mrs. Rodriguez turns on him. You would defend adultery, Thomas Hartwell? I would defend the right of a mother to hold her child, Thomas replies. And the right of a woman to be judged by more than her worst moment. Mrs. Rodriguez looks between them all, her face flushed with anger. The town won't stand for this. They won't let that woman corrupt an innocent child with her presence. They'll demand you send her away. She stalks off, her skirts kicking up dust with each angry step. In the silence that follows, Elena begins to fuss slightly, sensing the tension in the air around her. She's right, Maria says softly. I'll bring nothing but trouble if I stay. People will remember what I did, and Elena will grow up bearing the shame of it. Father Miguel watches Maria soothe her daughter with gentle movements, natural as breathing. He thinks of a stranger's final words, tell her, I try to love her. But here is someone who doesn't need to try, someone whose love flows like water finding its course. People remember what they choose to remember, he says, and they forget what they choose to forget. Time has a way of changing what seems important. Thomas nods. Besides, this child needs her mother. That much is plain to anyone with eyes. Maria looks at them both with something like wonder. You would help me? Even knowing what I am, what I've done. I know what you are, Father Miguel says. You're a woman who made difficult choices in impossible circumstances. You're a mother who has spent weeks watching her child from the shadows because you were afraid your presence would harm her. That tells me more about your character than anything else. Elena has fallen asleep in Maria's arms, completely content. The three adults sit quietly for a moment, each lost in their own thoughts about love and judgment and the complicated ways that families come together. If I stay, Maria says eventually, if you let me stay, I'll need work. A place to live. I won't take charity, even for Elena's sake. Thomas clears his throat. I could use help at the forge. Books need keeping, customers need tending to. It's not woman's work, traditionally, but neither was caring for a baby until a few weeks ago. Maria stares at him. You would hire me? Knowing what people will say. Let them say what they want, Thomas replies. I care about what a person does from today forward, not what they did yesterday. Father Miguel feels something warm expand his chest as he watches these two broken people reach toward each other across the space that shame and judgment have created. Elena sleeps peacefully between them, unaware that her future is being decided, unaware of the courage it takes for adults to choose love over fear. There's a small room behind the church, he says. It's not much, but it's clean and private. You could stay there while you get settled. Maria's tears return, but they are different now. Tears of relief rather than despair. I don't deserve this kindness, she whispers. None of us deserve grace, Father Miguel replies. That's what makes it grace. As the sun climbs higher, casting shorter shadows across the churchyard, the three of them sit together with Elena sleeping in her mother's arms. Father Miguel knows that Mrs. Rodriguez's prediction will likely come true. The town will resist Maria's presence, will demand that the sinful woman be sent away from their midst. But as he watches Maria whisper soft Spanish words to her sleeping daughter, as he sees Thomas studying them both with something like peace in his weathered face, Father Miguel realizes that sometimes the most important battles are fought not with words or arguments, but with the simple act of offering shelter when the world demands exile. The question now is whether their small circle of grace will be strong enough to withstand the storm that's surely coming, and whether love can truly triumph over the long memory of a town that has never learned to forgive. The stranger arrives on a Tuesday morning when the desert air still holds the coolness of night. Father Miguel is teaching Elena to clap her hands. She is 8 months old now, sturdy and bright-eyed, when hoofbeats echo across the hard ground outside the church. Maria looks up from the ledger she's been writing in, her pen stopping mid-word. Someone's coming fast, Thomas says from where he sits mending a bridle. His hands never stop working, but his eyes move to the window, to Maria, then to Elena. In the months since Maria returned, they have learned to read the signs of trouble approaching. The rider appears in the doorway like a ghost made solid, tall and lean, with dark hair and the kind of mustache men grow when they want to look older than their years. His clothes are dusty from travel, but beneath the dust Father Miguel can see quality fabric, boots made for walking in cities rather than desert sand. "I'm looking for Maria Santos," the man says, and his voice carries the faint accent of education, of places far from Esperanza. "I was told she might be here." Maria stands slowly, the ledger falling forgotten to the floor. Elena, sensing something changing in the room, reaches toward her mother with questioning sounds. "David," Maria whispers, and the name carries 20 different emotions. David Morales, for Father Miguel, knows this must be him, steps further into the church. His eyes find Maria first, then move to Elena, and something in his face softens like wax near flame. "She's beautiful," he says. "She looks like you." "You're supposed to be dead," Maria says, and there is no joy in her voice, only a kind of tired confusion. "Carlos thought he killed me. Left me for dead, anyway." David touches his left shoulder, and Father Miguel sees the careful way he holds that arm. "Took me months to heal enough to travel. Longer to track you down." Thomas sets aside his leather work and stands. He doesn't say anything, but his presence fills the space between David and the rest of them like a wall made of silence and watchfulness. David's eyes move to him, taking in the scarred hands, the broad shoulders, the way Thomas positions himself near Maria without seeming to. "And you are?" "Thomas Hartwell," comes the quiet answer. "Friend of the family." Something in David's expression shifts, becomes calculating. "I see." He looks back at Maria. "I'll come and take you home. Both of you. I have money now, land in California. We can start over like we always planned." Maria tightens her hold on Elena, who has begun to fuss at the tension in her mother's body. "This is my home now," she says. "This?" David gestures around the small church, taking in the simple wooden pews, the modest altar, the life they've built from scraps and determination. "This is nothing, Maria. I can give you everything. A real house, pretty dresses, servants to help with the baby. Elena could grow up as a lady, not some desert foundling." Father Miguel watches Maria's face as David speaks. He sees the brief flicker of temptation. What woman wouldn't want an easier life for her child? But he also sees something else. Something that has grown in her during these months of quiet mornings and honest work and the peculiar peace that comes from building something real with your own hands. "Elena is not a foundling," Maria says, and her voice is stronger now. "She has a family. She has people who love her." "I love her," David says, stepping closer. "She's my daughter, and I love you. That's why I came back, why I spent everything I had tracking you down. We belong together." Elena reaches toward Thomas, making the soft sound she makes when she wants to be held. Without hesitation, he takes her from Maria's arms, and she settles against his chest with complete trust. David watches this exchange, and his face darkens. "Has he been playing father to my child?" David asks, and there is something dangerous in his tone. "He has been her friend," Maria says carefully, as has Father Miguel. "They helped me when I had nothing. They gave me work and shelter and a chance to prove I could be better than my worst choices." David reaches into his coat and pulls out a small leather pouch. It clinks when he sets it on the nearest pew. "I don't need their charity," he says. "I can pay whatever they've spent on you." "On her." The words hang in the air like smoke. Father Miguel feels something cold settle in his chest as he realizes what David is offering. Not love, but transaction. Not family, but ownership. Thomas's voice, when it comes, is quiet as distant thunder. "She's not for sale." "I'm not talking to you," David snaps. "Then talk to me," Maria says, stepping forward. Elena, hearing the sharpness in voices, begins to cry, soft, worried sounds that tear at Father Miguel's heart. "Talk to me, David, and tell me what you see when you look at us." David's face softens again as he focuses on her. I see the woman I love. I see our daughter. I see the life we were supposed to have before Carlos destroyed everything. And I see a man who thinks love is something you could buy back with gold coins, Maria replies. I see someone who believes a year apart means nothing has changed, that I'm the same frightened woman who ran away with you because she didn't know her own worth. Elena's crying grows louder, and Thomas begins to sway gently, humming under his breath. The sound is wordless but soothing, something he remembers from his own child, and Elena gradually quiets. David watches this, and his expression grows hard again. So this is how it is. You found yourself a new protector. I found myself, Maria says simply. I found work that matters. Friends who see me as more than something to be owned or protected. I found a place where my daughter can grow up knowing she's wanted, not just by one person, but by a whole community. What community? David laughs, but there's no humor in it. A dried-up priest and a broken-down blacksmith? This town that whispers about you behind your back? You think they've forgiven you, but they haven't forgotten. They never will. Father Miguel steps forward. Some wounds take time to heal, he says. But healing is possible for those willing to do the work. Pretty words from a man who's never faced real temptation, David says, his eyes flashing. Never had to choose between duty and desire. Haven't I? Father Miguel asks quietly. He looks at Elena in Thomas's arms, at Maria standing straight and proud despite the pain in her eyes. Every day, I choose whether to show mercy or judgment. Every day, I choose whether to see people as they are now or as they were at their worst moment. It's not an easy choice, but it's the only one that leads to grace. David stares at him for a long moment, then turns back to Maria. I'm offering you everything, he says, and now there's desperation in his voice. A real life, a future. What can they offer you? This man who made horseshoes and another who talks to an empty sky. Elena has gone quiet in Thomas's arms, but she's watching David with the solemn attention she gives to strangers. Her dark eyes, so much like Maria's, seem to be weighing something important. They offer me honesty, Maria says. They offer me the chance to earn my place instead of having it given to me. They offer Elena the chance to grow up surrounded by people who choose to love her every day, instead of people who love her because they have to. David's hands clench into fists. She's my daughter. Yes, Maria agrees. She is. And if you truly love her, you'll want what's best for her, not what's easiest for you. For a moment, Father Miguel thinks David might argue further, might even try to take Elena by force. But then he looks around the small church again, at the simple wooden cross above the altar, at the sunlight streaming through windows that Maria has kept clean and bright, at the ledger on the floor that speaks of honest work honestly done. This is really what you want? He asks. This small life in this forgotten place. This life isn't small, Maria says. It's mine. Elena makes a soft sound and reaches toward Maria. Thomas moves closer as she transfers from his arms to her mother's with the easy trust of someone who knows she's safe. David watches this exchange, and something in his face shifts. She doesn't know me, he says, and for the first time his voice sounds genuinely sad rather than angry. She could, Maria says gently. You could visit, be part of her life, but not as someone trying to take her away, as someone willing to love her where she is. David shakes his head. I can't. I can't stay in this place. Can't pretend to be satisfied with visiting rights to my own child. I came here to bring you home, Maria. Both of you. If you won't come. He doesn't finish the sentence. He reaches for the pouch of money, then stops and leaves it on the pew. For her, he says. For whatever she needs. He turns to go, then stops in the doorway. You're making a mistake, he says without looking back. This town will never fully accept you. These men will grow tired of playing family with another man's wife and child. When they do, when you need help, don't come looking for me. I won't be there. He walks out into the bright morning, and they listen to his horse's hooves fading into the distance. Elena babbles something that might be a question, and Maria kisses the top of her head. Is he right? She asks quietly. Will you grow tired of us? Thomas and Father Miguel exchange glances. It's Thomas who answers, his voice steady as stone. "There are different kinds of tired," he says. "Tired of carrying someone else's burden, and tired from good work well done. I've felt both, and I know the difference." Besides, Father Miguel adds, families aren't just made by blood. They're made by choice, by commitment, by showing up every day, even when it's hard. As if summoned by their words, Mrs. Valdez appears in the doorway with her daily offering of milk. She pauses when she sees the pouch of money on the pew, the tears on Maria's cheeks, but she simply sets down the milk and touches Maria's shoulder gently before leaving. The seasons turn. Summer fades to autumn, autumn to winter, winter to spring. David's money pays for warmer clothes for Elena, for better food, for small improvements to the church. But it's Thomas's steady presence and Father Miguel's patient guidance and Maria's determined love that shape Elena's days. The town's acceptance comes slowly, like water seeping into hard ground. Some people never warm to Maria, but others begin to see her differently. Not as the woman who betrayed her husband, but as the woman who works long hours at the forge, who tends sick children when fever strikes, who has never once complained about the hardness of her chosen life. Elena grows strong and curious. She learns to sit, to crawl, to pull herself up on the furniture. She laughs when Thomas makes faces at her over his work, babbles long conversations with Father Miguel during morning prayers, and sleeps most peacefully when Maria sings her the Spanish lullabies her own grandmother once sang. The morning of Elena's first birthday dawns clear and bright. Father Miguel has planned a small celebration. Nothing elaborate, but enough to mark the day she came into their lives and changed everything. Maria has made a simple cake with precious sugar and eggs, and Thomas has carved a small wooden horse that Elena immediately tries to eat. They are sitting on the church steps, watching Elena explore the world from her blanket when she suddenly pushes herself up on her hands and knees. She rocks back and forth for a moment, gathering courage, then takes her first wobbling step. She falls immediately, but pushes herself up again. Another step, another fall. Maria moves to one side of the small space between the church steps and Thomas's workbench, holding out her arms. Thomas, understanding, positions himself on the other side and extends his scarred hands. "Come on, little bird," Maria calls softly. "You can do it." Elena looks between them, seeming to weigh her options. Then, with the determined expression she wears when tackling any new challenge, she takes one step, then another, then 3 more in quick succession before tumbling into Maria's waiting arms. They cheer, all 3 of them, and Elena laughs with delight at the sound. She pushes away from Maria and toddles back toward Thomas, more confident now, arms outstretched for balance. Father Miguel watches from his seat on the church steps as Elena walks back and forth between her mother and the man who has become, in all the ways that matter, her father. The sun is warm on his shoulders, and somewhere in the distance he can hear Mrs. Valdez calling to her chickens, the sound of normal life continuing its eternal rhythm. This is what mercy looks like, he thinks. Not grand gestures or dramatic forgiveness, but small daily choices to love imperfect people in an imperfect world. Elena takes another step, and another, and Father Miguel sees in her steady progress the same patient faith that has brought them all to this moment. The belief that love, given time and tended carefully, can take root even in the hardest ground and bloom into something beautiful. In the distance, a hawk circles high against the blue sky, riding the thermals with effortless grace, and Father Miguel wonders if this is how God sees them. Small figures moving across the vast landscape, stumbling sometimes, but always reaching for each other, always choosing love over fear, always taking one more step towards something better than what they were before.